Hello and welcome to the 14 Going on 41 podcast. I'm Arvind and joining me is my delightful co-host, the ocean-loving, Gen Z speaking, trash talking, bad at math and season finishing, Kiara Arana.
Hi, I'm Kiara Arana. I'm 14 years old, and today I'm joined by my 41-year-old co-host, Arvind Iyengar. But usually we're both joined by a guest who's gone down the road less traveled. However, today, as you can see, we have no guest, Arvind.
In fairness, we usually have no guest at the start of every episode. So that's not going to be an indication of anything, Kiara.
Well, we're having no guest at all today. Not because of a lack of planning or anything. We've actually planned for this episode to have no guest because unfortunately this is our season finale. So I'm slightly emotional today.
The fact that you said unfortunately means this podcast has at least been a somewhat good experience for you. So I will take that as a win. But you're right, we are finishing up. If this is the first time you're tuning in, you picked a hell of an episode to tune into because it is our season finale. We're going to recap a few things that we've picked up over the past few months, speaking to different guests. We're going to recap a few lessons that each of us have learned, including some fun new lingo that I've picked up from Kiara. And we're going to play out some clips from our guests, almost like you talk about Friends a lot, Kiara. This is like one of those Friends episodes where they put in a few clips from older episodes and you feel a bit nostalgic and you try and put it all together into a theme. Although in fairness, they usually did that because actors had limited availability. So they were just trying to, mail in an episode and do it with as little actor time as they could.
We've played a lot of different games and we have a lot of segments during this podcast as well, Arvind. And so one of my favorite ones is our Gen Z word of the day, where I teach you some new lingo or brain rot words and then you guess what it means. And so we've had quite a bit of fun and your answers have been very funny to me at least. So I actually was curious, what has been your favorite Gen Z word of the day?
First off, I have to thank you, Kiara, because these words have come in very handy when I've tried to converse with younger people. It's been great. And I'm not just talking about my family because I'm Arvind Iyengar and there's a lot of Iyengar people in my family. But I do find I use the word no cap all the time. Literally like no cap, not making this up. And so that has to be my favorite. It's the OG. It may have been the first one you taught me on this pod.
Yeah.
No cap for the win.
I could have guessed that was your favorite actually because you use it quite a lot even while we're recording in all the other episodes, because you're right, it was our first. So throughout the season, you've used it quite a few times. I was talking to a few people who've listened to our podcast and they're all like, I love the Gen Z word of the day. And they all coincidentally also used no cap while talking to me about this. So it seems like it's popular with quite a few adults.
It's an easy one to understand. It flows through. You don't have to pronounce it differently. The other one I really liked was Earl.
Yeah, so you can't pronounce it because in case anyone hasn't tuned into the Lisa episode with the World Schooling Mom, Earl is actually in real life and we say IRL, but like Arvind couldn't understand saying the letters. So he's like Earl.
Earl. But yeah,
Earl.
IRL is a word I can use quite often. So yeah, those are my favorite Gen Z word of the days. And what we normally did was right after this, we would bring in our guests. But this time, we're going to take a short break. And once we're back, we're going to recap some of the themes and big learnings from the past few months.
We're back, and I am joined by Arvind Iyengar, the Stanford graduating, no capping, bad joking. What else can I add to this? IIT graduating, tech CEOing. I'm so used to doing intros, Arvind, and you do my intro at the start of every episode. Decided to reciprocate this time.
Well, thank you. This was not in our script, and we actually said we were going to kind of free flow into this one. All I heard was taxioing, but it sounded like taxiing, like I'm driving a taxi or I'm an Uber driver, which would be really scary for people because I'm a really bad driver.
Yeah, I think what you need to focus on is the bad at joking, like the bad joking, yeah.
I ignored that part completely. I just heard joking and I assumed good, but bad in a good sense. Because that's how Gen Zers speak. Bad means good. And so, with the intro out of the way, we're going to line this up differently since we don't have a guest and we're not doing standard Q&A. I was going to ask you, Kiara, what was one of your more inspiring or fun stories that just stuck with you from everything we heard from our guests?
So I'm going to start us off with a story that I have found both really funny and quite, like, well, you said inspiring story, right? So it's a moment from the Saurabh episode, which we did. And Saurabh Kumar is the founder of Blinkit. And he is talking about how, he's riding around his bike and he actually had an accident. And so the first thing that comes to mind is how he's not going to be able to do his deliveries. And I'm going to play this clip for us, but I just found that really hilarious about the fact that, you found your calling when you are more concerned about your business than the fact that you've broken your collarbone.
One of the mornings I was going to drop pamphlets to the newspaper stall. Yeah, I'm going to do this. And I ran into an accident. So I fell from my bike, broke my collarbone, and
Ouch.
realized that, okay, now I can't do deliveries. So that was the harder thing. So it kind of killed a little bit of momentum for me because I couldn't go out and go and talk to these stores, couldn't do much marketing either. So it took me about a month and a half to recover where I could again ride a bike.
But at that point, did you know that was your calling? Because you've broken your collarbone, and instead of, oh, how do I get this fixed and how do I get better? The first thing you said is, oh, I can't do deliveries.
Yeah, because I think what the excitement of getting an order and doing delivery was not a thing that I had experienced before.
That was pretty funny, Kiara. I do remember that. I also remember he talked about pamphlets a fair bit. My favorite story was actually Viren talking about the Paralympic athlete Sheetal Devi. And Viren's a former India hockey captain, CEO of the Olympic Gold Quest, supporting aspiring athletes and para-athletes. And he had this to say about one of the athletes, the archer, Sheetal Devi.
Sheetal Devi, unlike many of the other para-athletes, was born without both arms. And everything in life that you and me take for granted, Sheetal Devi cannot do. So she cannot pick up a glass of water. She can't eat food on her own. She can't put her clothes on her own. It's tough for her to go to the washroom on her own because it's a struggle to push and pull a door. And yet, this girl who life is such a struggle has learned to fire a bow and arrow with her foot. She holds the bow with her foot. She pulls the drawstring with her cheek and neck.
My goodness.
The target is 50 meters away. The tension in the drawstring is so much. I struggle to pull it and hold it steady because my hand shakes this way. Sheetal Devi fires 300 arrows a day in training, every single day. And if she doesn't fire that much, she feels she hasn't trained enough. And we started supporting her at the age of 15. Last year, at the age of 17, she went on to win the Paralympic bronze medal in the mixed compound archery event. And for me, again, one of the most emotional moments for that girl to go out there, compete against para-archers who have the upper limbs and to win that bronze medal. The whole stadium was standing, giving her a standing ovation. And Sheetal Devi has just taught us she's taken away all our right to complain about anything in life.
That was definitely one of the most inspiring stories I've ever heard in my life. And I remember my mom was also in the room, but all of us, it brought tears to our eyes.
You know what's crazy? Since we did that recording, Sheetal Devi has actually qualified for the able-bodied India junior archery team. So she's a para-athlete competing with folks with limbs and able-bodied competitors, and she's made it to the national junior team, which is just like ridiculously amazing. So that story just keeps getting better and better.
In addition to these really inspiring stories, what we really wanted to cover was some life advice that stuck with us. And so we have about 4 different themes that we thought were really important during the course of this podcast. And so I'll start us off with the first, which was setting your own frameworks. And that was really highlighted for me in the first episode with Rahul Singh, the co-founder of Idea Forge, one of India's top drone companies, spoke about childhood.
No kid is born with the concept of being conscious about what other people think or what is the right thing or what is the thing to do. It is things that we pick up as we grow as kids by the influence around us. So in some ways, either my parents or the environment that I grew up in probably did not influence me to be so concerned about following conventional choices. And that's something which is something which can apply to anyone. And I'm trying to see how does that apply to my daughter as she grows up.
No, that's really interesting as you think about frameworks. And I think it ties in nicely to what Akshay Saxena, who is his HBS dropout, IITian, who followed his calling to set up Avanti Fellows, a not-for-profit. He talked about following someone else's framework growing up. And so I think both what Rahul and Akshay said and tie in nicely to setting your own framework and figuring out your own path.
Most of my childhood and at least my late teens, early 20s were kind of hijacked by this desire to just accomplish, right? So we were given a framework. I think it started from school where you were told that you're worthy if you get certain number of marks, you're unworthy if you get certain set of marks. And everything in the way that I measured my life was based on frameworks that other people gave me. And I think it took a fair amount of time, some fiscal and financial independence, some perspective to actually figure out what is the frame I want to live my own life in.
So I think just as a world schooler, that is so important for me because even though I don't go to school, I'm not in that system. That framework is always in the back of my mind, my parents' mind, and anyone's mind that we talk to. And so it's hard not to, slip back into those frameworks that other people have given me. So what Akshay talked about was really important.
Yeah. So lesson 1 was setting your own framework. I'll go with lesson 2, Kiara. And I like to keep it short and simple. And that is just do it. It came up in so many episodes, right? Just this bias for action. People were just like, yeah, I'll go do this. I'll figure it out. Or I'll move back to India and start a company. Like everyone had this cool story of just going out and doing it. The one I really liked was Ruchita Bhatia, who's the founder of Love and Cheesecake, who before starting Love and Cheesecake had a paintball business. And the way she just heard about it and decided to, let me actually learn more about it was really interesting.
It was a chance conversation with my brother who was studying in the US at that point, and he had gone and done something called paintball. And he was explaining what
activity?
it was as an activity. He had done it, he did it, for fun and as an activity. And he was talking to me about his day and how he went and played and how much fun it was. And I said, this is not here. And this is something that I can bring back. So I packed my bags and I went in the middle of still working with Ogilvy. I packed my bags and I went to California. I hunted down one person who was willing to teach me the ropes of how a paintball field and the paintball equipment works. He had been in the business for about 40 years.
But sorry, I need to go back. I'm still mind blown by this. You had one conversation about paintball.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'll do this.
Yeah. What does it take to go figure? It's still in that nascent stage where you're trying to figure out, will this work? Will this won't?
For me, it was, how casually she was like, I'll go. It seemed like the obvious thing to do, to go do it immediately. And her paintball company was a huge success. So, that really paid off.
It's like going to buy vegetables, right? Yeah, I'll just get on a flight, go to California, I'll borrow a car, I'll drive, I'll figure it out. But it was, I was smiling just listening back to that clip again.
So, an episode where the biased action and the just do it really came about was an episode with Aviana Mehta, who is a 16-year-old who is an author, a podcaster, and an advocate of climate change. And she started Plastic to Build. Her mantra is not, someone else will handle it, it's like a problem for the future. It's like something we need to do now. So it came across the whole episode. And maybe this is one of the key points where I felt that came through.
So I had this like a collection of those plastic bottle caps lying around, and I asked Google, what can we do of this? So it was like top 10 hacks to reuse these plastic bottles. And I was just like, okay, I'm not really satisfied with any of them. Let me just try something. I'd also learned from my research about something
Out of
called
curiosity,
aerator.
sorry, what did Google suggest?
Google suggested, small arts and crafts to make out of these. And I was, what am I supposed to do with that? Like, it'll go back to the landfill again. Like, once we're done with it, it'll go back. And all sorts of arts and crafts, like ones with googly eyes and all of that. I was just like, okay, no, I'm not doing this. So what I did was I took my mother's safety pin and I started our nearest stove and I poked holes inside that plastic bottle cap. Now,
Okay.
what is the relevance of those holes? It was basically to create this homemade aerator. So basically, which reduces the amount of water but maximizes water usage. So I started creating these aerators and I started putting them all on our taps, on the taps of our entire house.
The only thing I could think about, Kiara, in addition to the bias for action, is every time she said bottle cap, all I was thinking was no cap. But no, that's pretty cool. You're right. It came through there, but it came through in the entire episode. It's the one we did just last week. And she was really, really about, let me just do it. So yeah, that's a good second lesson. I'm happy to bring up our third because I tried to wordplay it and wordsmith a little bit in and bring in a song of mine that I like by Journey, but it's a wordplay. It's Don't Stop Evolving. It's actually Believing, Kiara. But it's a song you may have heard. Because your parents listen to it. But Don't Stop Evolving.
I listened to it too.
You listen to Journey?
Yeah, I only Don't Stop Believing. It's in my oldies goldies playlist. It's one of my favorites.
Wow. In fairness, most people have only heard Don't Stop Believing by Journey, and people won't know too many other songs there. The fact that you've heard it means you have picked up some good music taste over the last few months. So I will take a sliver of credit for that, Kiara. But in the theme of Don't Stop Evolving, I was really impressed with Lucas George, who's a producer who's done shows like Good Omens, Nashville. He's done movies. He's done so much. He's moved to Scotland at a later stage in life. And he talked about how with the times, he's just figured out what the next trend was and he's adapted and he's enjoyed those adaptations.
The business has changed so much since I've been in it, When I started out in the film business, it was butterfly splices. And if you wanted to do a 2-second dissolve or a 3-second dissolve or whatever, you had to go to the optical house. And if you didn't like it later on, it didn't feel right. It was a big deal to go back and change it. Now you can do it. I can do it on my editing computer right here in my office. Then CG came out with computer graphics with Steven Spielberg and so on. And the business has been changing ever since. And I think it's great. And now you can almost do everything in your home. I mean, you can sort of, from editing to shooting to even conceiving things. I mean, I've been playing with AI and I built things that don't even have actors and shots that I would take, hundreds of thousands of dollars to shoot.
And you don't have to put up with the drama of the actors.
That was a really, really funny episode as well. But you're right. I mean, the fact that, Lucas is in his 70s, but the fact that he keeps such an open mind and that he's actually working with AI, and I just found that incredible. And keeping an open mind has always been really important to me. And who I chose for the Don't Stop Evolving theme is Vijay Subramaniam, the founder of Collective Artists Network. And he coincidentally is also doing a lot of work with AI, but just his mentality of keeping an open mind and, staying prepared.
It's why Collective is now invested in AI, right? I saw this coming 3 years ago, right? And that's why we made Mahabharata. Now we're making Hanuman. Then we're making Krishna, Shiva. We made this band called Trilok. Because I always believe that you have to take a punt at what's 3 years down the line.
Yeah, I think Vijay definitely talked about thinking ahead. Even later in the podcast, he talked about some of the things he sees that he's planning for that are 3 years ahead now. So that was definitely about constantly evolving.
Okay. So, my next theme, which I'd picked up on, is that inspiration can strike at any moment in time and at any moment in your life. And so, for me, where I thought this came across was when we spoke to Martina Harvey Capdevila, who is living in Sri Lanka and who has started her own sustainable fashion brand called Original Source and Supply.
When you were a 14-year-old, did you know that fashion was something you wanted to get into?
Yes, it's something that I'd known for years. And actually, I'd even say before I knew what being a fashion designer meant, I used to say that I wanted to be one. I think it was based on liking clothes and being creative, so liking making things. And I think that linked them both together. So I never had Barbies. I had action men when I was a kid.
So did I.
And well, there you go. But did you make clothes for them?
No.
So I'd use them as my models, I guess. And I'd get fabrics from my gran, from my mum, and make clothes for the action men. But unfortunately for them, or fortunately, a lot of the fabrics I was getting were, like pink silky fabric. So they'd have like pink silky pajamas. Or I had one that was the Little Mermaid's like stretchy fabric. So I've still got them. They're in my cousin's house now. So I've got this action man in like a skin tight Little Mermaid's vest top. And it was, it's quite funny to look back at.
That was pretty funny. And it's amazing that she knew she wanted to be in fashion ever since she was a kid. I don't think everyone is that lucky. And I actually was interested in Aditya Kuber's episode, who is the founder of Idea Brew, who's working very closely with us on this podcast. And he talked about how he ended up studying physics and photography and took this winding path to realize getting into storytelling was where he wanted to be.
I actually pursued a bachelor's degree in physics, which is something I use 0% of in my everyday life and throughout my career. And that actually just happened because at that time, there was an option for me to jump into a mass media course. So over the course, like Arvind, you said, those who can't do teach and those who can't play, right? Went down that road, figured that, okay, maybe I could tell stories through photography, through storytelling and writing.
One second. How does physics tie into storytelling and mass comm? And
I spent 3 years trying to figure it out, and I still haven't. 30 years later, honestly, so no idea. So the thing is, there was some connection that the government drew between physics, which had a section on optics, and therefore said, this is photography, so let's teach photography to the kids. And then someone came in and said, if you're teaching photography, why not add a section of mass media into that? And before we knew it, I was doing a course called a BSc in physics, photography, and mass media.
I think it was hilarious that eventually led him to getting into photography, his pictures published in the paper, then a job with Times, then writing articles, and eventually now audio podcasts. So it was a winding path for him to find his calling.
So, yeah, inspiration can strike at any time. And I also have one more. Our guest, Mikołaj Golachowski, actually gave some really, really interesting advice to someone, which I thought definitely deserved to be played back during this season finale.
A few years ago, no, maybe now about 15 years ago, I received an email. It was an email from a young woman, and this is what she describes in that letter. I approached you saying that I really like biology, but my parents, and maybe this is important, that school is in a very small town, but it's a private school, which means that parents have to pay. Like we have free education in Poland, but also we have private schools that parents have to pay for, right? So her parents basically were business people from that small town, right? And when she told them that she wants to study biology, they said, no, that's a stupid idea because you won't get any job after that. So you need to study law or business or something like this, which will give you a proper income in the future. But she didn't want to. And she came to me saying, look, I really like biology. I'm not interested in law. I'm not interested in business. And I have no idea what to do. Shall I go against the will of my parents? And I said, well, look, you're a smart girl. You'll probably be a decent lawyer or a good doctor or maybe a decent businesswoman, but you won't be excellent and you won't ever be happy because you will not be doing things that are your passion, right? And only when you are passionate about something can you be excellent at it. So you'll be good enough. Yes, you'll make a living, but it will be an unhappy life because you will have a lot of money possibly, but you will not be following your passion. On the other hand, if you choose something that you are passionate about, then like inevitably you will be very good at it because this is your passion. And then it means that you being so good at it, one way or another, you will find a way of applying this for your practical life. So basically, you will find employment because you'll be so good. So in my mind, following your heart is the most reasonable choice, right? Despite what other people say what reasonable is. That's actually not reasonable because it only leads to an unhappy life of not doing what you're passionate about.
I think that was great advice in terms of what the reasonable choice should be. And later, Miko actually said that girl wrote him an email saying she took his advice and is now studying orangutans in Borneo and following her calling. So inspiration struck and she needed a little bit of a nudge from a mentor. And so you're right, inspiration can strike anywhere and you can get advice in many shapes and forms and you just need to figure out what's right for you.
Sometimes advice can be the best gift.
Yeah, so those were our 4 big themes, right? Which was about inspiration can strike at any time. Just do it with the whole bias for action. Don't stop evolving just because it sounds catchy. And setting your own frameworks. So that was really a lot that we would have typically covered with guests, but we are packing a lot into this segment. We normally have a what if segment with our guests, but instead we will take a break where we'll talk about our favorite answers from the what if game over the past few months. And we are back. And instead of playing the what if game, since we have no guest to play it with, we're just going to do a bit of a recap of our favorite what if answers. Kiara, what did you have?
So during the what if segment, I often end up asking a couple of questions that I like asking to each guest, just so that I can know what each person thinks. And, answers vary. But I think the answer that varied the most was an episode with Neha Chauhan. And she's an actress. And it really got me thinking. What if you were 14 years old? What advice would you give to your teenage self?
I actually have the other way around advice. I have an advice that my 14-year-old self would want to give my present self. Because I feel that at that age, we have unwavering belief in our dreams and we are hopeful and, a lot of courage. It's just that when we grow up along the way, we kind of get overwhelmed by the scope of things and that, inaction sets in, due to which, we kind of drift away from our dreams and our goals. So I think that would be something that I would like to tell my current self, that, be that courageous one, have that hope, and things will happen.
That was really good advice. And you're right, it was a very different take on the question. I quite enjoyed that in the moment as well. Okay, I'm going to do a couple from the same episode. One which was funny, and I really thought this guest was funny. And this was Lisa Boston, who is a world schooling mom. She's an educator who said, you know what, we'll pack our bags and our family will learn through travel. And now she's setting up a school in Bali. And why don't we hear what she had to say to a what if question about an alternate career path? Let's say education is off the table. Let's say world schooling is off the table. What if these were off the table? Where do you think you'd be right now?
I'd be married to someone rich with a yacht and just be like cruising around. That was always a plan B, I think.
That was hilarious. I cracked up. But she also said something a bit later, which gave me some insight into how she thinks. the question you'd asked her is, what if your kids wanted to go down the conventional school path as opposed to world schooling? And this is what she said.
I think as the parent, I think we would have pushed to try world schooling first before admitting defeat and choosing the conventional path, because the value of what we're doing, I think, is so much more. But if you have unhappy children, then that will change the way that you make a lot of your decisions. So, if they were unhappy doing what we're doing, then the conventional route might be the way that we have to go. It's the flexibility of it. You go with the flow. Things change, people change. I would hope that they would change their mind at some point in this conventional path. But if they didn't, so be it. If they're happy, that's a driving decision making for me.
I think, yeah, her answers were definitely funny. And even when I first asked that question, she said, if they didn't want to agree to that, I'd divorce my family. But her priority is really her family and her kids. And that showed throughout her episode.
And so now it's time for the happiness rating section of the podcast, Kiara. And, we thought about whether we quiz ourselves on our own priorities, but the math nerd and Excel nerd in me just loved the concept of taking everyone's rating, putting it on a spreadsheet, figuring out averages, and looking at trends. So that's what I did. It was a lot of fun. And so I'm going to ask you a little bit, Kiara, and just for folks listening for the first time, we usually ask guests to rate how important certain factors are for their happiness from 1 to 5, 1 being the least important, 5 being very important, right? So they just have to rate for every parameter 1 or 5. The parameters we had were fame, wealth, health, fun, legacy, impact, and friendships. And so of these 7, Kiara, what do you think was the lowest rated?
I'd definitely say that fame is the lowest because, well, for all the others, at least as far as I remember, there were ups and downs where people had, like, some had it higher, some had it lower. I think fame was consistently on the lower side, and there was no one who actually put it very high up. So I'd say fame would be last.
Well done. You have been listening to the episodes and paying attention, and subconsciously your math did well. Fame was by far the lowest with a measly rating of 2.1 on 5. Everything else was at least 3 plus. Fame was by far the lowest, and a lot of people had it at 1 or 2. The highest it got to was 3.5 for one person. So maybe it's also the guests we had, and we didn't get the really famous guests. So we didn't rate it highly. But fame was dead last. What do you think was second from the bottom?
I'd say legacy. Similar to fame would be my answer.
Well, legacy was actually 5th with an average rating of 3.5. And what was interesting with legacy is it's the one that had the most variance. And variance might be a concept you'd learn if you went to school in math, Kiara. But there were a few people who had it at 4 or 5 and said legacy is actually very important. There were others who had it at 1 or 2. So weren't as many 3s, but it was the most divisive answer that we got from folks, depending on how they thought about it. But in 6th place was actually wealth at 3.3. And interestingly about wealth, almost everyone had it at, 2 or 3, lots of 3s. A lot of people said we need a certain degree of wealth, but beyond that doesn't matter. A few people had it at 4 or 5, maybe 3 people in total. But for the most part, it was a lot of 3s and an average rating of 3.3.
If you'd asked me, I would have switched them. So in my mind, I always thought that wealth would be slightly higher than legacy because, like you said, most people said you do need that basic wealth.
That's close. So that's our bottom 3. But legacy and wealth were not too far apart at 3.3 and 3.5. The other 4 were all 4 plus. Okay. What do you think was 4th?
I would say maybe health. 4th. A lot of people said that they would like health to be a 4 or a 5, but in actuality it was a bit lower. So that's why I'd place health at 4.
I think there were a couple of ones where I wasn't sure how to read the answers, where someone said, oh, I'm rating it as a 4, but I'm living it like a 2. And someone else said, I'm rating it as a 1.5, although it should be a 5. And so I just took the original answer. There were a couple of cases where people recognize it was important but aren't living through on it. But it ended up at a 4.4 because there were a lot of people who said, without health, you don't have anything. Quite a few people had it at a 5 as well. And so health had an average rating of 4.4, which got it into third place. So health cracked the top 3. But in fourth place, with a rating of just 4.1, was something else. Want to guess what that is?
Probably impact.
Impact was second at 4.5. In fourth place with 4.1 was fun.
Ooh.
So even though we had a lot of people who's like, oh, what's life without fun? There are a few people. Akshay actually just said 1 for fun, even though he seems to be having a lot of fun, I think, in life. Vijay said 1.5. And then we had a few others. Fun's important, but we had a few 3s. And so it ended up at 4.1. So still a very healthy score, but fun ranked in at 4th. Health in 3rd at 4.4. In 2nd place with 4.5 was impact. And impact was very high, lots of 4 and 5 ratings. So consistently on the high side. But the winner with a rating of 4.7 and with only 4s and 5s, so no one had it as a 3, at least someone had impact at a 3, was friendships and connections, which, there's actually a lot of studies that say one of the greatest drivers of long-term happiness is the connections you build and the bonds you form. So family, friends, connection generally ranks high. And that kind of lived through in our small sample space.
Either that or our guests didn't want to offend certain people.
They didn't want to offend you, Kiara, because all of you are good friends of yours on the pod. But no, I think a lot of our guests have gotten to where they are because they haven't been afraid to speak their mind, even if that meant offending people. Or so I'd like to think. And 4.7 just means friendships and connections, a big, big driver of happiness. And to me, that would probably be one of my highest rated parameters as well.
No, definitely friendships and connections were the highest. And I think we've mentioned this on the podcast before, but when you and I were sort of sitting down to discuss what the 7 parameters of the happiness rating game would be, one of them we'd actually thought of was family, and that, like, no one can say that's anything under a 5. So we ended up removing it because the answers would have been consistent. But yeah, friendships and connections are almost the same, almost there.
Yeah.
5.
Friends are the family you make in real life. And so that was a different spin on our happiness rating game. We'll be back with our final segment of our season finale right after this. We are back for one final time this season to wrap up. And we're going to do a bit of a spin on the good old days. But we need to cue that music first.
In the good old days.
So I can't believe that will be the last time I'm hearing that music in a while. Actually, when you started to say stuff about it being the last time and then the last segment of the last episode of this season, it's made me a little bit emotional. But yes, you're right. Usually this would be time for the good old days. And I know I've made a lot of jokes about how totally excited I was about the good old days throughout this season, but I've actually enjoyed. I mean, at the end of the day, I love history. Good old days is moments in history. So I was joking when I said I'm not so excited about these segments. I actually was. You've got this on recording. You can actually, you can play this back, Arvind.
On loop for posterity. And if you miss the music, you can do the same with the good old days theme. But we had a lot of good old days references, some good, some old, some days. I don't know. What's the one you're going to take away the most?
Well, actually, it's the one that we did in an episode with Miko, where we talked about silence and the importance of silence without having all the distractions that we do in today's world. And while we've talked about how sometimes everything with the internet's good, it can often be a bad distraction. And so silence is amazing, and I need to remember that more.
That's a good callback to a great Simon and Garfunkel song. But I'm going to take that advice to heart, Kiara, and I'm going to be silent for a bit because when we were talking about our takeaways for the whole season, and we know we covered a bunch of themes already, we were wondering what's the way to end. We thought we'd say a line each, but you actually went and wrote a whole poem. So I've had a chance to read it briefly, but I'd love to hear you say it. And I'm just going to listen in silence as you summarize this entire season for you.
Well, this was just a small poem I wrote, so not very great, not very sophisticated or anything, but I'm just going to go ahead and start. Life's a series of this or that. Do you turn left or right? Do you flee or do you fight? Forks in the road that will shape your life. All you can hope is that it doesn't bring strife. 1 or 2 or 10 paths you can take, 10 decisions you think you should make. What are you supposed to do? What have others done and should you follow it too? So you observe and stare just to compare to see if you are good enough, if you are made of the right stuff. So you stress and stress, not making the pain any less. Do you choose passion or sense, imperfection or a picket fence? But you should create a life that you can't wait to wake up to, and happiness will just follow through. Live and enjoy in the now, and you will figure out how. This is your time, your life, your show, and the world will bend if you let go.
Woohoo! That was very good, Kiara.
Thank you.
I don't think you needed to cut yourself short at the start. I enjoyed listening to that, and I literally have nothing to add other than to appreciate it in silence.
Well, that is it for this entire season, and we'll see you next time. Until then, drive safe on the road less traveled.
Peace out, party people.